Welcome to the DIY Writer Show with the mild-mannered, slightly heroic host, Jeff Bacon.
This is Jeff with the DIY Writer Podcast, and today we have Duncan Thompson. He's from the northern part of England, and he's also a horror author. So this will be kind of interesting to get his dark and decrepit details on whatever's going on in England today. How you doing, Duncan?
I'm great, thanks, Jeff. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Nice sunny Wisconsin, nice warm weather. It's getting cold as hell.
I wish I could say the same here. It's a dark, miserable day here in what we call West Yorkshire, in the north of England. So it's forecast snow, but we've not seen any. It's just more cold rain.
Hopefully they're just lying. No snow.
They normally exaggerate a bit with the snow forecast and potential snow for 10 days straight, and then really it's just a light dusting up in Scotland somewhere.
So do you have the same thing over there? I mean, as far as weather goes, it seems like the weathermen at one point in time all decided that they needed to hyperventilate when any kind of weather's coming. It used to be, they might get some snow or whatever, but now this is going to be a catastrophe. I mean, they just kind of sensationalize the whole thing.
Yeah,
and this is coming in from the north, and this is coming in from the, and this all can, and they just go nuts.
I think they do that. Yeah, and I think the reason why was in the 80s. I can't remember. Was it one of the more famous weathermen over here? Said, "Don't worry, nothing to panic about. There's not going to be a hurricane." And the next morning, it was a disaster. I think it was Michael Fish who was called, and people questioned him. Said, we've heard there's going to be a really big storm, a big hurricane. 60, 70 mile an hour winds." And he told everyone not to worry. It wasn't true. And it was Armageddon the next morning.
The weather guys are never right anyway. They're always kind of 50% off usually. At least here they are. And but the big deal they make out of it, going to the other side, make sure you're protected, make sure it's going to be 30 below.
I think they're just erring on the side of caution now, and if they say it's going to be a blizzard and there isn't, that's fine. It's better than
it's fine.
Going the other way around, telling everyone it's going to be sunny, and then can't get out your door because of 6 foot of snow or something.
I get a kick out of how animated, at least over here on the local news channels, they get. It's like the most exciting thing to them at all. It's like there's riots and this and that, and you have to protect yourself, lock yourself down, hide yourself in the basement. Oh my God, it's gonna rain. Yeah, it's just weird. But
the local.
Excuse me. I really get excited about weather. Just kidding.
Yeah. I think the local weathermen are a bit more accurate, really, because we have the national news on, and then we go to the regional.
Yeah.
And our weather station actually for the local news is pretty much just behind my house, more or less.
Oh, really?
It's just I live in quite a semi-rural area, so there's a lot of moorland, and I think the weather station's just up on the hills behind us, so we're pretty accurate where I am, but.
Here in Wisconsin, we're not all that accurate. We just kind of guess, and they hope they're right, and we always hope they're wrong, because it's Armageddon every weekend. But that's okay. But we're here to talk about some book stuff.
Yes.
So you got Shadow of the Woods, a night terror thriller. That's your latest release.
We do. That's here's one I made earlier, so to speak. Copy right here. So that came out in June.
Okay.
Actually, it has actually been out before, but in 2 separate parts.
Okay.
I originally self-published a novel called Within the Dark Place. Well, a novella, really, not a novel. It's probably about 50% of Shadow of the Woods. Within the Dark Places, 2016, I think, and that was kind of just to test the waters.
Okay.
And trying to get a gauge how people perceive my writing, learn the trade more on a professional level. And that was really just a standalone, intended to be a standalone novella. And then I had the randomest dream about the protagonist, Joe Costello, in the book. And it was just this one scene from this dream I really remember. I thought, I've got to write that. Got to write something to do with that. And so I just built up this sequel from there, really. And then released that as Where the Darkness Hides, which was an immediate sequel. And then when I got networking with Panther Publishing, we merged the two together to form one fuller novella, which is now Shadow of the Woods.
Cool. What can you tell us about the book?
So it is effectively a book in two parts. So the first part, which was originally within the Dark Places, is effectively like a stag party who go on a camping trip for Joe. You mentioned earlier, it's his last night of freedom, before the big day. He's a bit of he's an outdoors kind of guy. So normally your typical stag party over here would be, a night on the town, maybe even fly over to the Beef Fair or somewhere like that. But no, Joe doesn't want to do that sort of thing. He doesn't want to do the traditional stag party. He just wants to go on a nice peaceful camping trip with his brother and his two closest friends. And while they're camping in the woods, they come across an almost unseen force, effectively, almost like they've been attacked by their own shadows. So the first part is it's very homage to independent horror, the late 70s, early 80s, the video nasty sort of era.
Sure.
And it did end on, it was kind of like a cliffhanger ending, but I didn't really want to take it further. I wanted to end it on that shock ending. But as the sequel developed later on, kind of move away from that sort of horror into more a claustrophobic setting of a rundown police station. So it's almost like the second part, if I had to compare it to it, would be like Assault on Precinct 13, but with a demonic entity rather than criminals. And then so I've kind of what was set up in the first part in the woods kind of is developed further, and you find more out about the creatures and the entities Joe and his friends encountered in the woods.
Sure.
And then obviously Joe, being one of the few survivors from the first part, is then trapped in the police station because he's taken in for questioning about the disappearances of the other characters.
Right.
One of the characters earlier on in the book being the younger brother of a police sergeant. So Joe's always taken in for questioning, and then the evil entity kind of follows him into the police station.
All hell breaks loose.
They get trapped inside, and all hell breaks loose in there.
Yeah.
So kind of up the ante a bit as well, and it works well because both parts of the story just flow and continue without really any break.
Sure.
It works well as one full novel.
Yeah.
So that's the long and the short of it, without trying to give too much away.
Yeah, no, and that's fine. I just, a little synopsis isn't bad to start off with, as far as what the book is and everything else. So, just out of curiosity, how long have you been writing horror?
I've probably always written horror in some shape or form.
Okay.
I started having an interest in writing since I was about 7 years old.
Okay.
So I think there was always some darker elements in my mind. I think one of the very early influences was Roald Dahl. If you ever read his works, like The Witch is what's just been re-released recently, and things like that. So it's always had, even when I was writing as a child, was like a dark undertone to it. And I never really intended to write horror as such. I never thought, right, I want to write a horror novel. I want to write the scariest books, in The Shining or The Exorcist or something like that. I just have an interest in the supernatural.
Sure.
And just put that into my work, really. And if someone finds it scary, then great. if I don't find it scary, but still enjoy the story, that's great as well.
Sure.
So I think I just set out and write about a bunch of characters who have a supernatural experience, and if the reader takes something away that which is horror, fantastic. But it's not really what I set out to do as such. It's just where it seems to go, because like I say, I've had these dark undertones since I was about 7, 8 years old when I started writing. But when I sat down and started to take it, trying to make it professionally, I would say that's probably only within the last 6 or 7 years, maybe.
Okay. So you live in kind of a historic area. I mean, you know, of England, and there's lots of historical places that you can go to.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of curious. Do you ever kind of do maybe a little paranormal? You know, I mean, just go someplace that's supposedly haunted and go check it out, or I mean, do you do you do much traveling around? I mean, let's not talk about this year, but previously, I mean,
yeah,
do any of that kind of
yeah. So
paranormal investigation or anything like that? Or
I think one of the big influences when I started taking an interest in it when I was younger, I lived in the city of York, which is a lot of history there, going way back to Roman times, but it's also one of the most haunted cities in the UK. So there's a big influence there, and there was a story of the village we lived in. There was supposedly like a cottage which was haunted by the ghost of Guy Fawkes' grandmother.
Oh, really?
Whether that was true or not, I don't know. But these things stick with you, especially when you're little. And I think that's probably where it all came from, really. Just living in what was effectively one of the most haunted cities in the UK. Fast forward into more recent times, there's quite a lot of old stately homes and things like that around this area. There was growing up what was like an arts and craft shop, and it was set on like 3-4 levels. And there was a story in the local paper of like the ghost of an old Cavalier soldier walking around the floor. So me and a couple of friends went down to this craft centre, having a walk around, talking to the staff there, try to catch a glimpse of this ghost. But conveniently, the ghost only ever appeared when the shop was closed.
Oh, sure.
Funnily enough, so we didn't see anything. But that building is now a block of flats. So I can't remember when it got converted into flats. It's been flats for quite a long time now. But none of the residents of the flats have ever claimed to have seen anything, from what I know of. So,
oh, really?
Yeah, it's strange, but yeah, but like I mentioned when we were just talking beforehand, before we around where we are, it's a lot of rural areas, a lot of moorland, so it's very almost like the movie on the tip of my tongue now, American Werewolf in London.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, the beginning of that is very much like that sort of area around here as well, so that comes into it. And
God, that was I loved that movie when I was a kid. American Werewolf in London.
Yeah,
that
it's
was
a great film.
It just was. I don't know. It's one of those. I think it was probably one of the first horror movies that I watched at a preteen party, maybe.
Yeah.
Or something like that, and everybody's just like kind of having fun being freaked out. Yeah, it just has stuck with me. So anytime it's on, I kind of watch it and like, oh yeah.
I think it's the transformation scene. I think that's still one of the best werewolf transformations.
Really is, because it's so detailed.
Yeah, it's just all practical on set. It's practical effects, and it to a degree, it's it is real. It makes it more real than CGI because it is actually happening, even though it's a puppet and animatronics. It's still there happening live on set, so it just makes it so much more real.
It's not CGI.
No.
Yeah. But that was you just kind of blew me back a little bit. I'm sitting there like, yeah, I should probably watch that again. During Christmas, of course, because that's the time when you watch American Werewolf in London.
Yeah.
But
yeah, and then I think the last time there's a like an old stately home here, which does host a lot of slumber parties, for want of a better word, where you can go and book a place at this part and then spend the night there and see if there's if you can catch a glimpse of the ghost. And that I think it has appeared on, at least in the UK anyway, on TV a few times, and having psychics go and everything. So I've been there a couple of times. I've not done the overnight stage yet, but I've been to because it's a museum now, you see. So I've been to the museum and a look around and see if I could catch a glimpse of anything. And I've just remembered something. The last thing I did was went to an old police station, which is supposedly haunted, and we did a walk around the old cells, and which is under the city hall, and we actually got one of the scary parts of it was they actually lock you in one of these old cells, which haven't been used since the 80s, and it just absolutely stinks to high heaven, and with all the graffiti on the back of the walls, things like that. And you can take photos as you're going around, and they went open up one of the cells, which is supposed to be a hotbed of supernatural paranormal activity. And I took a few photos, and then one of the gentlemen who was on the tour took a few. And when he looked at his camera, he'd actually captured some orbs on his photo. Yeah, but mine, strangely for my photo, I didn't think at the time. I just thought, oh, it's just bad photography. But then looking back on it, the photo I took was just complete, almost like static on an old telly what hasn't been tuned in. You know, the old pixels, snowing. It looked like that, and like I say, I brushed it off at first, and then thinking, I thought, well, why would it do that? The lighting was right. You know, it's not. It's just a camera phone, but it's
right.
These days they're still pretty good, pretty decent, and it's like, well, maybe that was something after all, which is because all the other photos I'd taken before and after, they were perfect, but just this one particular cell, it just didn't come out at all. It was like, well, actually, was it something interfering with it, or?
So does that kind of freak you out a little bit, or is that
it wasn't until later on when I was writing up about it, and I went through it, and it's like, when I first looked at them, you know, on the way home, I was thought, oh, it's a bad photograph.
Right.
But then, you know, when you think about it, well, hang on a minute, was there an experience there? And it does excite, it does get you excited and gets your blood pumping a bit and makes you want to go find more and write about it.
So is that your closest brush with paranormal, or have you had anything else that's happened to you?
It's hard to say. I think there was it's hard to say if is it an actual paranormal experience or is it just, could it be explained away?
Yeah.
There was one incident when I was on a school trip where we'd spent the week at like an activity centre, you know, going cave exploring and mountain climbing and things like that. And there was stories running around where that was haunted. So I went up to the dormitory to get something out of my backpack. I can't remember what I was getting now. It's like a spare pair of socks or something.
Yeah.
The cupboard door just randomly opened on its own. So that whether it was, I can't think why it would have done that. I'm sure there was some explanation for it, but at the time, you know, with all the stories going around, it was creepy. Yeah, just this cupboard door randomly opening. And I remember a window just randomly shut on one of the boys' hands and crushed his hand in the window frame. It was a way you have to like lift it up. And he was, I don't know what he was doing at the window, why he was leaning out anyway, I have no idea, but it just came down on him and it just trapped his fingers in.
Jeez.
I think so. Everyone said that was the ghost and things like that. But I remember probably the most, the most terrifying experience was, I'm trying to think how old, around about 12 or 13, it might have been a little bit older, maybe no more than 15, I don't think, 12, 13, you know, early teens.
Yeah.
Like I say, where I've grown up for the most of my life is very rural, lots of moorland, like in American Werewolf. And we used to go out and play on these moors every day, whether we were going out with a frisbee or just pretending like the army soldiers sort of things running around. And there was one particular, it was quite flat and open space, so you can see for miles, and out of the blue, just this figure appeared. So it possibly could have been walking along, been for some time, but you would have thought would have spotted him. So he just seemed to appear out of the blue, and he was wearing like a red parka coat, but he had his hood up, and he could not see a face under the hood whatsoever. It was just like a black void, and he started walking towards us, and there was just something about like a change in the atmosphere, and we just thought, this just doesn't feel right. Let's go. So we started heading back to where the houses were, and he started following us, and we just, this doesn't feel right. Got quite worried, so we started then running home, and he was still following us. And when we made it over the other side of the brow of the hill, turned round, and then he was just gone. Like, well, where did he come from? Where did he go? Don't know, because you could see for miles around. It wasn't like someone could just disappear.
Yeah.
So I think that was probably the scariest, if you can say it's a paranormal experience I've ever had. And I think it was just the fact that there was just nothing under this hood at all. It was just black under this hood. It wasn't like it was a dark day. It was quite a bright. So it was in the winter, but it was quite a bright sunny day. So it was just like a blackness in this under this hood, and in fact he just came just as quickly as he disappeared, just as quickly as he appeared, and it was just it was the atmosphere, like an also electrical sort of charge in the atmosphere as well, and there was about 4 or 5 of us, and we just all felt something wasn't right with this figure coming towards us. We assumed it was a man. He looked more masculine than anything, but we didn't know for definite, and it was just the way they were just starting to follow and come towards us, and it just freaked everybody out.
Yeah.
These like 4 or 5 guys in the adolescence, early teens sort of thing, and it just freaked us all out, and it just one of those things. So I think that was probably the scariest sort of experience like that I've ever had, really. I think it's because there's a lot of it I just can't really explain away too much.
I think experiences like that are probably scarier than what you might think is a paranormal in your mind.
Yeah.
Where you don't really know it's real, it's there, and whether it can be explained away or not. At the time you're looking at it and you don't feel right, and you feel that kind of drain on your soul, and all of a sudden it's like, oh shit, and you're running, and
that's it.
Yeah, but
I mean, like years later, if you I still speak to most of the guys who were there, and one or two of them like, oh, it was just some weirdo who was, some like hobo on the moors or something. But it was just, in my mind, maybe I'm biased because I'm interested in that sort of thing, but there was just too much I couldn't quite nail down and explain. So
well, it's not like he walked past you and went into a store or anything. He just disappeared.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, but in fact, he suddenly just appeared out of nowhere, and it's like you could see a good few miles in all directions, really.
Right.
And then suddenly, bang, he's there, and then after I don't know, maybe half a mile chase, he's then just gone. Just turn around, and it's turn you black for only maybe 30 seconds. Turn around, and there's just no sign at all. So it's.
Yeah, that doesn't sound paranormal at all. It sounds perfectly normal.
Natural, yeah.
Yeah, because hobos are renowned for moving really, really fast.
Yeah.
Oh shoot! So is it stuff like that kind of got you into writing horror in the first place? Is that interest in that?
Yeah, I think it definitely was. I mean, I've tried to write a few other genres. More in my late teens and things, I used to write drama, and I suppose what would be romantic comedy, maybe, like High Fidelity, that sort of from that sort of approach. But yeah, I've always been drawn back to, like I say, not outright trying to scare the crap out of people, but just a tale of supernatural suspense, really. And
right.
I think it is from just growing up in certain areas of the country where there's a lot of supposed activity and having an general interest in it, and watching things like growing up, things like X-Files and that sort of thing on the telly, and it's just, it just all merges into one. One.
I think horror is probably closer to thriller than anything, especially when it's suspense type stuff and paranormal and everything else. I think it ends up being like more of a thriller than it is psychological thrillers and stuff like that, where they just kind of really mess with your head and you're like, did it happen? Did it not happen? I always find those books interesting.
Yeah, I think if you look at it from a cinematic context, there's plenty of jump scares, but once you go out of that theatre or you turn off the TV, you kind of forget about it.
Right.
But the more the thriller sort of psychological aspect, it's where you're there laid awake in the middle of the night in bed, and it's running through your head and you can't get to sleep, and you see a shadow on the wall, and you're like, what on earth's that? And they're probably the more, maybe not when you're watching it so much, doesn't seem scary, but then later on something's got you about it, and it's only then later on do you realise there's something a bit more sinister towards it.
I've sat there after I've written a short story. It kind of freaked me out for a couple of days, but I wrote a short story about night paralysis.
Yeah.
And how this guy kept on, he wasn't really asleep, but he wasn't awake and he couldn't move, and he was just, basically paralyzed, and it was this dark hat, guy that comes out of the corner and so on and so forth. And it ends up he's working with a serial killer. So he'd paralyze him, and then, the third night the serial killer come and just chop him up. Like I said, it was a real short story. But what I thought was weird is I was sitting there thinking about the story, and it's like, okay, I should change this. I should do this, whatever. And just kind of running through it in my head, and I'm laying in bed. All of a sudden I feel something tugging on my foot, and I'm like, oh, and there's nobody else in the room. It's just me, myself, and I. Not even the dog's in there. My wife's in the other room with the kids, trying to get them to sleep. And it was just like, oh, shit, and you start seeing things, or you start, hearing things. And there for a minute, I thought, I can't get out of bed. What the hell did I do? But then I was able to. I mean, I was just sleep dreaming, I guess, or I was just dreaming or whatever it was. But it was so real for like 30 seconds.
Yeah.
And then I talked to some of my friends, and they're like, are you sure it wasn't real? And it's like, don't stop right now. It was purely a dream. I swear to God. But it's stuff like that kind of freaks me out a little bit, especially I think I have an innate fear of being paralyzed in my sleep and just watching things happen. That's why I wrote that story. But
that's they say you should write what scares you, if you want to write an effective horror story.
Yeah, it just kind of blew me away for a minute. But
yeah,
I don't know. I think I at some point in time, I write dark fantasy, so it's real close. But I've got a bunch of these little snippets that I want to put together into like an anthology of short stories or something like that, but it's in my pile of projects to do when I can. That big fat folder that you'll never get to,
I've got all these files on the computer, and it's like I had to make a folder for unfinished work and just stick them all in there and come back to it, because they were just distracting. It's like 6 different stories unfinished, dotted about on the desktop.
I was talking to another author from South Africa, and she has this YouTube channel where it's like, weird shit that fascinates me. Her name's Joan DeHay, and she we're talking about what she studies, in order to come up with her ideas. I'm kind of curious, what's your Google search history look like? What's the stuff that kind of gets you off track and you spend hours looking at thinking, oh, I'm going to write a story on it?
I think I've got actually on the, can't really show you the way it's angled, but I've got like a whiteboard just behind the computer here, and it's actually got a list of full moons from 1998, which when I was researching for a story, which is probably one of the strangest things I've got. So I was looking at doing a werewolf story, but setting it in the late 90s. I don't know why I wanted to do that. I think I wanted to kind of take myself back to when I was just finishing high school. So I set this werewolf story in the late 90s, and I wanted to try and get it quite accurate. So I just like googling like full moons through 1998. So I got on here like 5th of October, 4th of November, 3rd of December listed on this whiteboard here, and it Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday. So that's one of the. I mean, it's not anything for the police to come and take away your laptop or anything like that, but it's probably one of an unusual.
Yeah.
Like, why are you looking at that?
Because I'm a writer. Yeah, sure. Werewolves have always been something that I've really loved. And I think it's because when I was growing up, you had, American Werewolf in London. You had Silver Bullet.
Yep.
That movie. The Howling. Movie. They're all really good from my perspective. I always, those are the movies I remember as far as werewolf movies. Nowadays it's almost kind of a joke to watch those compared to what those older movies do.
I think that's in a way kind of why I wanted to I started writing this werewolf story, because in my teens, my go-to kind of creature feature was vampires.
Yeah.
And I think and then with just the advent of Twilight, it just killed it for me. And I was never really interested in werewolf. It was a stick right through the heart.
Yep.
I never really had an interest in the werewolf genre as such. I'm not sure what. I think it was just because I'd kind of gone off all vampires, and I must have read a story by someone or seen some. I think it was. I can't remember the name of the author now. Bain County. Have you come across those books? It's like a series of books, and I can't. His second name, somebody Rice. I'm sure he's called somebody. But it's a set. I think there's five books in a series called Bain County.
Okay.
So I think that's what kind of piqued my interest in the werewolf genre. So, and it was kind of just playing around in my mind at some point. And then I think it was just before the whole COVID thing exploded.
Yeah.
And I think I must have written about 40,000 words, and I was quite impressed with some of the stuff what I had written and where it was going. But I'd never normally I'm quite a plotter and get the ending right down before I even start writing a draft and key scenes and where I want to go. And this one I just kind of had a rough idea, not really any plot, any direction, and just thought I'll just see where I go. As hamster approach, as they call it. So I think I wrote about 40,000 words and liked where it was going, and I was like particularly impressed with one of the characters in it, one of the antagonists, who was all, kind of like the high school bully. And I remember sending what I'd written to my friend, who normally he's kind of like my first beta tester. And he was like, his character was called Barry Garside, and it was loosely based on someone I experienced back at school. And he just turned around. His first comment was, "That Garside's a right bastard." I was like, well, yeah, that's what the approach I wanted.
Yes, so that's what I was going for.
But and then when everything happened over here, I just kind of lost momentum on it. So I've not written anything on it for months. Yeah, 8 months. So I keep meaning to go back to it. But a lot of the things I was using was putting in it. I had planned for other stories, really. So it's like, well, do we develop this, or do we just go back and take the best of bits out of it and use them elsewhere? So I don't know. I'll have to see where it goes. But
what I found with COVID with me is, and as I interview more authors, I kind of think about everything I haven't done in the last few months, and my writing went to hell. But I came to realize that my idea bin got bigger. So maybe it wasn't totally lost, but I mean, it was just.
Yeah, I had a lot of unfinished drafts building up over the COVID period, but a lot of new ideas, but not really getting anything to fruition and getting to the end of it.
Yeah, which is not productive. Well, I mean, it is, but on the other hand, it's like I'd just like to finish something this year. It'd be nice.
Yeah.
Come on, let me do
it. It's like as long as I get to finish the first draft. Normally, my process is once the first draft's done, I print it off, put it in a folder, and stick that on a shelf, and leave it there for months, and then come back to it with fresh eyes, kind of almost forgetting what I've written.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of a bit more of a critical approach, and then kind of hammer the edits and the revisions a few months later. But if I don't get that first draft finished in like one big foul swoop, I just lose all momentum and all enthusiasm for it. So it's harder to pick up then.
Yeah. I get that. I'm a pantser, 100%. I mean, yeah. I'm a pantser who wishes he was a plotter. So I really try hard to plot at first, and then my pantser just takes over, and then that whole outline and everything else is just, the beginning and the ending probably end up the same, but the direction that you go in the middle, all the beefy stuff, just kind of goes all over the place.
I do have a few, like I say, more a plotter, but I do have a lot of answer moments. Like with Shadow of the Woods, is a lot of bits in that were like just written on the fly. Yeah. And like, actually, I like this. I like what I'm doing here. Let's keep that in and things like that. But on the whole, I try to plot it. It just keeps me more motivated when I'm going along, having a bit of a direction to go in. But I don't mind inspiration. Taking control every now and again. But yeah, this werewolf story most of it was written on the fly, and I think if I'd probably spent time plotting it, I might have actually got it finished and been motivated to keep going with it. So it's a shame, but just trying different approaches and seeing what works best. Really, I think there may have, if COVID never happened, it might have been a completely different story. It could be coming out soon. Maybe who knows? But I've not got rid of it. I've not deleted it, so maybe one day I'll go back to it and polish it off and finish it.
Yeah, I withheld I withheld 2 books because they dealt with vaccines.
Yeah,
it was just one of those things where okay, the best way to do this would be to have a national vaccine that that way they could infect everybody with this thing, and so on and so forth. And I thought it was just a really great idea. And then COVID happened. And it's like, oh God, I don't, it's fiction. I get it, but I don't want to seem like I'd written that particular idea down months before COVID even hit China, and that was the plan. And I was writing it. And then all of a sudden you start kind of hearing about, all of a sudden we're locked down. And I looked at the manuscript. I'm like, no, I should probably not do that. But now I'm kind of sitting with it. It's like nothing else works. It's the only way to do it. So I'm going to do it in 2021.
Yeah. Like for everything to settle down.
Yeah. Wait for the vaccine to come on. And hopefully the vaccine doesn't do anything like, create zombies or anything like that.
No, we've been just in like a circle of friends having a bit of a laugh and a joke, saying it's like the new Umbrella Corporation from Resident Evil.
Oh, I know. And the horrible thing about it is that when you kind of look at what's happening, it's like you do kind of think about that movie and the Umbrella Corporation and kind of some of the crap they're doing. I watched an interview with Bill Gates. I don't know if you've seen that or not, where he's talking about some vaccines that his companies are working on. And it's like, it makes 100% of the people sick and 80% of them or 20% of that are hospitalized after they take the vaccine. And it's like, and you might need 2, and we'll have to let the FDA sort that out. And it's just, the reporter's just drilling them, it's like, do you think that's right? Bill Gates is just flabbergasted at that point. But
stick to Windows and leave the medicine to the experts.
Yeah, but it was funny as hell, because as I watched this, and I like to watch Bill Gates, just choke on stuff. Because, I'm a computer guy, and I've had a great deal of disdain for him for quite some time because he stuck us with Windows. But The but watching him do that, it's like, oh, that is the head of Umbrella. Just because everybody gets sick and some get hospitalized doesn't mean anything. And okay, let's see what mutations come out of this. But
I think you've got to, end of the day, in all seriousness, you've got to have a bit of faith, and
you do,
yeah.
But
all jokes aside, it's.
It will probably be fine.
Yeah.
It scares me a little bit that they are coming forth with one so quickly.
I think that's everyone's concern, really, just the speed at which it's.
Yeah, so you kind of wonder what shortcuts they made, but you got to have a little bit of faith, and you're right.
Yeah.
But as a fiction writer, you also have to look at it like, we're gonna have some good material.
We've got to ask the questions. What would happen if
just
did A, B, C, and.
Right,
but you're always asking those questions and looking at it from different angles, and.
But I think fiction helps you with that, because you can take something that's happening in current events and write the most horrible possible ending, and something that'll never happen. You hope, and it almost makes maybe an undesirable conclusion to the story a little more palatable, because you read something that was so atrociously horrible that, okay, it's not zombies, but 20% of the people were hospitalized because of it. Okay, well, I can live with that. They didn't die. Oh well, I don't know. I mean, who knows? But I do think fiction, and especially horror, they dwell on your fears, and if you really grab a hold of that, it makes you stronger after you get done reading it, watching it, whatever, because you kind of know how to deal with it emotionally.
Yeah. I think you kind of, I don't know if seeing the funny side of it maybe is the right expression, but it's, you kind of maybe prepared for a worst case scenario. So if something does happen, it's like, well, it's not too bad. It could be worse.
It could be worse.
It could be worse.
Well, look at Stephen King's The Stand.
Mm.
I mean, that was, deadly virus comes out, wipes out most of humanity, and then it ends up being a fight between good and evil, and only certain people were, saved because they're naturally immune. And I mean, just, stuff like that. And, I don't know how many books have been pointed out in the last 6-7 months that, oh my God, it's foretelling COVID. And it's like, no,
it's not really. No,
that was much worse. It
was. I did start rereading The Stand, actually, within this past year, and there was one bit I'd not really taken it in the first time reading, but when I was rereading it, I was thinking, hang on a minute, if there was anything to be predicted from it, it's like Stephen King's predicted this whole R rate, especially earlier on in the book, when one person gets infected, spreads it to 3 more people, they spread it to 6 more people.
Yeah.
But he's describing the R rate here in this book, and that term has not even been coined until the last 9-10 months or so.
Yeah, you're right.
But it's like he's described it to a T. And when was that first published? When was it? 78 or something like that.
When I was in high school, that was an old book. So, and that was late 80s. So yeah, it had to be 70 something. But that actually all the Stephen King books at that point in time were, Thinner. I think Thinner had just come out, and that was a freaky one. And, you'd read The Stand, and you'd read Carrie. I'm trying to think of the other one that was really predominant. I think Pet Sematary.
Pet Sematary that's one of the very few books that really got to me.
Yeah.
With that, it was just one particular scene in it, and I was just like, I'd put this down for at least 2 minutes here. Came back to it, finished it off, but I think that's the only time I've ever experienced that reading it.
Yeah, he has, I don't know, he has a way of just kind of sucking you in, and all of a sudden you're like, oh shit, what was that noise? you know.
Yeah.
But,
I can't remember what book. It was definitely a Stephen King book I was reading. I'm trying to think which one it was. Just glancing over my shelf here, and but I was really into it, reading it, and suddenly a bird flew into the window, and I must have jumped about a mile out of my seat. I was like, what the hell was that?
Yeah, he's good.
I think what book it was now. Yeah. No, I can't remember. I think possibly Christine. I think that was the last Stephen King book I read was Christine.
Christine, yeah.
But I don't think it was that one, but I'm not sure. I know I was definitely reading a Stephen King book anyway. Oh no, it was The Dark Half I was reading. Sorry, it was we have the office where I work. We have like a communal library, so you just bring in your old books. People can borrow one, and there was like a hardback edition of The Dark Half, but I've not read that one before. I'll pick that up and read that. And sat there in the canteen reading it. Bird just hits the window.
Yeah, that's kind of like Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds.
Yeah. Oh, that's very early. If you want to call it a horror movie.
Well, yeah, it was.
But that's one of those very early experiences for me watching it. It's one of those that my dad made me sit and watch. There was a lot of films, and my dad would sit me down and watch them.
Yeah.
Like, should I really be watching this when I'm 5 years old? You see them later on growing up. Another one was the film called Witchfinder General, but I think in the States it might go by another name. It's got Vincent Price in it. It's like about the witch trials, in the 1600s, sort of King James the First era. But I think in the States it goes by another name. But yeah, so I watched that when I was like quite young with my dad, and then it was on the Horror Channel. Not so long, maybe past year or so. I thought, I remember watching that, and I'll sit down and watch it. And I was like, I can't believe you made me watch this when I was about 8 years old, and this guy gets his eye gouged out with a spur off his boot.
Yeah.
And things like that.
I'm trying to think what one. I don't even. There's so many Vincent Price movies that are good.
Yeah.
What was the one I don't know. I can't remember what it was, but where if you're really scared, this thing kind of grew around your spine, and the only way to actually shrink it was to scream. And so he scared this mute woman to death, and then cut her open and pulled this, what looked like a trilobite. I mean, it was this big long thing that was wrapped around her spine. And, and then the story just kind of goes to, I mean, it's really bad after that. This thing escapes and he's just killing people.
It doesn't ring any bells. When was it made? What sort of era?
Oh, it was like
probably an oldie.
Yeah, like 50s, 60s.
Yeah.
Who knows? But it was.
Try and look that up.
I watched that when I was a kid, and I was probably 7, 8 years old. It was one of those things like, they had creature features on Saturdays, and then there's a horror movie of some sort afterwards. That it was this movie. It's like, oh my God! So this thing just grows when you get scared, and then you have to scream to kill it. That one messed me up for like 2 or 3 weeks. I just remember. Don't go to sleep scared because you have to scream to kill it, type thing. But like I said, I can't remember. It was, just a short hour movie or whatever, but he's some mad scientist, of course. But, and he loses everything, has a very successful practice, but he loses everything because of his obsession with this, whatever his discovery was. And, but, it was a lot of...
Vincent Price, was it?
It's a creepy son of a gun.
Yeah. I'll have to try and look that one up, see if I can find it. It doesn't ring a bell though. But...
Yeah, I haven't seen a Vincent Price movie in years. I really haven't. I should probably, because I have so much time. I'm sure you do too. Yeah. Just down and binge watch Vincent Price for some reason.
You could probably get a DVD collection or something, like a box set of his greatest hits, maybe.
I'm sure you can. You can get just about anything you want nowadays.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Getting back to werewolves, I think the thing that kind of took me away from werewolves are all the Werewolf Academy things that are out now. Where it's teenage werewolves and
Oh,
you know, they're going to school together, and blah, blah,
yeah,
blah,
I think
blah.
a lot of kind of subgenres of horror have gone that way, haven't they?
Yeah, I mean, they take the classic creatures and they kind of draw them down into, hey, it's just a big school for monsters. You know, it's like,
yeah,
okay, you know, and the sparkly vampires, you know, those have killed.
It's kind of like the Avengers version of the old like Hammer horror films, or the old black and white monster movie, you know, Dracula and the Mummy and stuff.
Yeah, you know, the monster's really misunderstood, but they have some natural characteristics, and that was his ancestors that killed, you know, entire villages. That's not what they are now anymore. It's just like kind of drone on. I know a lot of authors have had a lot of success writing that. You know, kudos to them. You know, they're doing a good job. Yay. But as a fan of horror, I just kind of like, no, don't kill it for me. So I try not to read that stuff. But
yeah, I think they tried to plug into like the young adult sort of audience. That's where the money is, I suppose. And,
yeah.
The
money's where the kids are.
That's it, yeah. Yeah, hook the kids in, and you know,
yeah, hook the kids in, and
the parents will follow, and that's it. You're onto a winner.
Well, I mean, they do that with everything. Look at like Disney and Frozen, or Moana, or you know, those stupid cartoons that you have to sit through 432 times because you have a young kid. You know.
Oh yeah, it's Minions in our house. They're just
Minions. Yeah, there's another one.
I can't stand that film. I mean, the best, in fact, the most enjoyable. In fact, credit where credit due. It's got a really good soundtrack. the rest of the film's just terrible.
I'll give you that. Yeah.
Yeah, the soundtrack's brilliant. All the old '60s British invasion bands on there. You know,
yeah.
Stuff, but it's.
Nope, I would give you that.
Yeah, and it's one of those strange shows that every time it's on and I see it, there's always a new scene I've never seen before. Like, when did that happen last time?
When these hit cartoons come out and the kids get into them, you know, when my oldest it was Lion King, you know, and we had to get the VHS tape for it so they could watch it every damn day, you know. And then it was a Little Mermaid when my next kid was, you know, into that age, and now it's Frozen and Moana and da 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 da. I don't think as parents we really watch, just because we know over the course of time and the 432 times we're going to watch that movie, that will pick it up, you know. But if you don't pay attention to it, everything's
subliminal, if anything.
Yeah. You know, have you ever been walking around the house and all of a sudden you're humming something? It's like, damn it.
That singing Let It Go.
Yeah. Just around the river bend or something like that. Yeah. It's like, damn it.
So I when it's a brand new one what comes out, a Disney anyway, I'll quite happily sit and watch it for the first time. Growing up, you know, me and my sisters, we grew up on Disney films, all the old classic ones.
Yeah.
So I'm quite interested in seeing a new one, but once is more than enough, really, especially of late. I don't know, just don't seem to have the magic like the classics.
I think they're probably going to run it into the ground before too long with the princesses and, you know, all that other kind of stuff. Yeah. And yeah, I used to kind of like it when they used to say, okay, this is a limited time offer, and then we're putting it in the vault for 10 years, and then you wouldn't see it for 10 years.
Yeah, that made them a bit more special. You know?
Yeah, I mean,
used to come around the theaters and cinemas every like 5 or 6 years or something, and
right, you know,
a bit more exciting to go see it, a bit of an event.
Yeah, it was an event. It wasn't, you know, something that you can just, you know, go to Netflix and watch, or Disney Plus and watch 19 times. But I don't know.
I remember when I remember seeing Jungle Book. That's one of my all-time favorite Disney films. I remember seeing that for the first time at the cinema, and then it came about again maybe 5 years later, and the people were queuing all the way down the street to see it.
Sure.
And you don't get that anymore. You don't see that. I mean, no. COVID aside, but you know, you don't get them queuing around the block to see a movie anymore.
It used to be when I was growing up, we had this movie theater in this little town called the Orpheum, and they would show older films like that, and that's exactly what it was. You know, if it was Bambi or The Jungle Book or the Aristocats, you know, whatever. I mean, people would be lined up to get in there, and then you're hoping that you'd make the cutoff because they wouldn't have any more chairs. But back then they just set up folding chairs, and you get in there, you couldn't walk out. So if there was a fire, everybody's dead. But we didn't care because safety regulations didn't happen. But
yeah, I remember it was like that when I first time I saw Snow White as well. People were queuing. It wasn't as big a queue as it was when I saw Jungle Book at the time, but there was still a queue at queuing up at the kiosk to get your ticket. You couldn't just walk. I think last time I went to the cinema, you just walk straight in, no queue.
Yeah.
The nearest cinema to me now, we don't even have staff on the kiosk. It's just like a ticket machine. You punch a button and it gives you a ticket. And there's someone on like manning the popcorn stand, but that's about it.
I think the last movie I went to is probably the last Star Wars, movie, and the theater wasn't even full, and it was I think the second day that it had been out. And the thing that I find funny about it is now the theaters have these big reclining chairs.
Yeah.
And, your
and there's like a cup holder there, and
oh Jesus, and which is fine. I mean, it's wonderful. There's actually a theater where you can actually order off a menu and they'll deliver your food to your chair. And I mean, it's it costs a little more to go there, but it's pretty awesome.
I mean, growing up, we had like the little small town cinema, maybe two or three screens on it, and the seats are all tatty and the stuff hanging out. And then like on the outskirts of, if you went down what we call the motorway, like highway, out on like a retail park in the middle of nowhere, they had the big multiplex.
Yeah.
With the 20 screen cinema, and that had the reclining seats and the cup holders, and that was like the first around here anyway. That was the first of its kind for a long, long time.
Yeah.
If you wanted that sort of luxury, you really had to go out of town to get that. But now all the where we are, I think there's about I'm going to say there's about 3 cinemas, but there's probably not now. It's probably only about 1 because the others have shut down because of COVID.
I wonder. I kind of wonder how many of those are going to make it.
Yeah.
Into past 2021. How many of those are going to be open? Because I think they're doing pretty good before. But
I'm not sure what it's like over there in the States, but I imagine it would be a similar scenario where all we're seeing on like the entertainment news, all the cinemas are banking on the next James Bond film to be able to pull it back. It's like, well, it's sad that you have to count on just one film to be able to hold up.
And actually, I think those James Bond movies will probably go over really well just because Sean Connery's gone now.
Yeah.
And it's kind of I don't know. I love those movies with Sean Connery, and then lost me with Pierce Bronson, and then Daniel Craig kind of brought me back into them, but I didn't like the Roger Moore ones. I
think the Connery era for me is definitely the best.
Yeah, I think so too.
I mean, I like the whole franchise. I've always liked it. It's another one of those things you grow up on. But from a cinematic point of view, those very early Sean Connery ones anyway were brilliant. To know Goldfinger.
The only character that ever scared the hell out of me was Jaws.
Yeah.
I mean, that guy, he's freaking huge, and he's got those teeth, and he just bites into people, and it's like, oh God, just horrible.
Yeah, but the Roger Moore ones just got silly. They
did.
Yeah. I think the Live and Let Die was great, and then after that, we just.
I think the one where I really stopped watching was probably Moonraker.
Yeah.
It was probably the one that gets kind of like, again, okay, no. It's just kind of a blink fest, basically.
I remember with the Timothy Dalton ones, and I remember License to Kill was, from my circle, friends and things, License to Kill was always like the black sheep of the James Bond movies. It's like, no, that's not a proper James Bond. We don't like License to Kill. And it was on TV not so long back, within the last few weeks, and I sat and watched it. And watching it now, especially with the Daniel Craig ones, it was very ahead of its time. What the Daniel Craig's ones Explore, it kind of sets precedent for that. It's way ahead of its time, and it's a lot better now, I think, than it was given credit for. It's have you ever read any of the novels, the James Bond novels?
A few of them when I was young. I couldn't really get into them. My grandfather read just about anything that Ian Fleming would produce, and they were laying around. And at the time, I was so into Stephen King that obviously the two aren't the same, and I just couldn't get into them. I tried. I think I read one or two of them, and it's like, nah, this is boring old people stuff. I'm going to go back to
I mean, I read in my late teens. I read the original Casino Royale, so the original novel, and not a right lot happens in it. It's about 200 pages of a card game, effectively.
Well, that sounds great.
Yeah, and I think I had I didn't realize at the time it was the first edition of Thunderball.
Really?
From like a second-hand store, and I lost it.
Oh.
I lost it, and then it wasn't until years later when there was a documentary about it, and it was there. This first edition. I had it, and it was worth a fortune. I have no idea where it's gone or what happened to it. But back to in the books, the Timothy Dalton and Daniel Craig ones are very much more like Bond is portrayed in the books.
I forgot about Timothy Dalton's. I didn't really watch him because I was burned out on Roger Moore. And then I tried to watch a Pierce Bronson one, and it was horrible.
They kind of became a bit of a spoof of what they were, really.
I mean,
and just had to get ridiculous stunts in and stuff, which they had good stunts in the old Connery ones, but they were relevant to the story. There was a point to it, whereas they just tried to throw anything in just to outdo the last film.
Right. Again, Hollywood, way to wreck it. Good job. All right. Well, we're coming up on an hour, and I think we've hit horror. We've hit your books. We've hit horror movies, action movies, thrillers. Anything else you want to hit?
Oh, ask away.
Got anything to say to your readers? What you got coming out?
So I've signed 2-book contract with Panther.
Okay.
So we've not announced anything official yet, but the publisher did put a statement out on Twitter a few weeks back saying that we're going to make a formal announcement within the next week or so, hopefully. So we have a follow-up to Shadow of the Woods.
Okay.
Coming out, and then that's Touchwood due out early April. Although that could still change.
Sure.
Go, but we're looking at early April. And that's going to be called Shadows of Hell.
Okay.
So that'll continue Joe Costello's story, and then hopefully in September there's completely brand new, because Shadows of Hell was actually out as a previously under the title Where the Darkness Reigns, following on from, mentioned earlier, the first 2 little novellas. It was done as like a trilogy. We merged the first 2 together, so people may have read it before under a different guise, but now it's obviously from under the Panther brand, the Night Terrors brand, as Shadows of Hell. So that's next in the pipeline, and then completely brand new, fresh material, which I'm sure a lot of people have been eager to find out. There's been a bit of a hiatus with that. September, it's currently under the title Mystery of Ravenfield, which if you read Shadow of the Woods and the follow-up Shadows of Hell, that title will mean something to you. But that title may change. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see, because I know they did Shadows of Hell, not the Shadows of Hell and Shadows of the Woods were the contracted title. It's something we discussed with the publisher, and we changed during pre-production and during pre-release. So that title may change yet, but that's going to be the first brand new original book will have released in quite a long time, in a few years. So that's September, and The Mystery of Ravenfield, which is probably more a dark fantasy sort of tale than a usual horror.
Okay. Very cool. Very cool. Well, Duncan, it's been a pleasure talking to you. I'm sure we'll talk again.
Definitely, yeah.
You know,
got some the new books are definitely out and things. We'll have to try and arrange a follow-up interview and
absolutely. I
touch base there.
Right now, I think I've got all the authors from Panther coming in for an initial interview, and then we'll probably just keep on following up.
Yeah.
You know, and see how this works. But yeah, I wish you all the best of luck. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
You too. Thanks very much.
Especially, you know, kind of nostalgically going back into the good old horror films. But with that, I'm going to say goodbye. This is Jeff with the DIY Writer Podcast, asking you to follow me on whatever medium you happen to be reading or listening to the podcast on, and also subscribe to my YouTube channel, because I have some interesting things coming up in the next month or so. So anyway, Duncan, you have yourself a great night over there.
You too. A good day.
All right. Bye-bye.
A pleasure. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Please hit the subscribe button. I get a bonus for every subscriber, and I only need 1,506 more to become a full-time paid employee. Help me, please.